This is Sparta. That's the iconic scene of Gerard Butler shouting, isn't it? When the movie 300 was released in 2006, it was etched into cinematic history. Slow-motion battle scenes, Spartans with six-packs, and that magnificent visual style. But what was the real Battle of Thermopylae like? Were the real Spartans like the ones in the movie? Today, I will tell you how faithful the movie 300 stayed to history and where it used Hollywood's creative freedom. And believe me, the real story is much more interesting than the movie. Let's start with the first question. Those six-packed, oiled, almost naked warriors we saw in the movie, were the real Spartans like that? The short answer, no. The long answer, definitely no. Real Spartans were certainly athletic and strong, there is no doubt about that. They were trained to be warriors from childhood. This system, called the agoge, started at age 7 and lasted until age 30. So yes, they were in shape. But did they fight almost naked like in the movie? Never. Real Spartans were fully equipped hoplites. They carried 15 to 20 kilograms of bronze armor, Corinthian-style helmets, breastplates, greaves, all made of bronze. Why are Leonidas and his men naked in the movie? Because it's an adaptation of a Frank Miller graphic novel. Miller wanted to mimic the athletic figures on Greek vases and statues. It's an artistic choice, but historically, it's completely wrong. If you saw a real Spartan warrior, they wouldn't look like they do in the movie. They would look more like those in the movie Troy, a heavily armed warrior in full armor. The movie says 300 Spartans, and this part is actually true. King Leonidas really did take 300 elite Spartan soldiers with him. But here's the big but. Did only 300 people fight? Absolutely not. According to the records of the historian Herodotus, there were a total of 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers on the Greek side at Thermopylae. There were 300 Spartans, true, but alongside them were 700 Thespians, 400 Thebans, 1,000 Phocians, and thousands of other soldiers from different city-states. Why does the movie focus only on the 300? Because the number 300 is epic, legendary, and the movie's story is built on the heroism of the Spartans. But the real story is this. In the final stand, when the Persians surrounded the pass, Leonidas sent most of the allies away. But 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians, and 400 Thebans stayed and fought to the end. So there were about 1,400 people in the final battle, not just 300. The Thespians, in particular, have been treated unfairly. They stayed until the end, too. They died heroically, too. But history and Hollywood only remember the Spartans. Now we come to the most problematic part of the movie, the portrayal of the Persians. How are the Persians shown in the movie? Freaks, monsters, chained creatures, strange types with piercings, and Xerxes is shown as a gold-plated androgynous figure. Was the real Persian Empire like this? Quite the opposite. The Persian Empire was the most advanced, most sophisticated civilization of the 5th century BC. Founded by Cyrus the Great, this empire had an incredible system of tolerance and organization. The Persians wrote the first Declaration of Human Rights, the Cyrus Cylinder, respected different religions and cultures, established an incredible network of roads and communication, were very advanced in architecture, art, and science, had soldiers from different nations in their armies. This diversity was their strength. What was real Xerxes like? He's depicted in historical sources as a tall, handsome, and powerful leader. He wasn't a strange figure as shown in the movie. On the contrary, he was a charismatic emperor. Why did the movie portray the Persians this way? Because the story is the narration of the Spartan Dilios. It's Greek propaganda. The movie knows this and actually does it on purpose. The story is told through the eyes of a Greek soldier as a form of Greek propaganda. But the audience often doesn't realize this, and that's why Persian culture is treated unfairly. In the movie, Thermopylae is shown as a narrow pass, and this part is true. But that scene design, that steep cliff, that narrow corridor, it's a bit exaggerated. Real Thermopylae in 480 BC was much closer to sea level. Mountains on one side, the sea on the other, and the pass in the middle. But it wasn't as narrow as in the movie. Its narrowest point was about 100 meters wide. Today, it's 2 kilometers inland because the sea has receded over 2,500 years, but back then it was truly a strategic point. How many days did the battle last? The movie shows 3 days, and that's correct, but how did each day go? The first 2 days, the Persians attacked in waves. The Spartans and their allies defended using the phalanx formation. The Persians could not use their numerical advantage in the narrow pass. The Greek hoplites were better armored, better trained, and more disciplined. According to Herodotus, Xerxes jumped up from his throne in astonishment 3 times when watching. His massive army couldn't get past 300 people. The third day, a Greek traitor, Ephaltes, who is also in the movie, showed the Persians a secret path through the mountains. The Persians surrounded the Greeks. Leonidas sent the allies away. The Spartans, Thespians, and Thebans stayed and fought to the end. The movie shows this in an epic way. A rain of arrows, slow-motion deaths. The reality must have been much bloodier and more chaotic, but the movie actually captures that feeling, that tragedy, quite well. The movie portrays Sparta as a glorious, honorable society, and yes, their military discipline was incredible, but there's a dark reality the movie doesn't show: the Helots. Who were the Helots? The slaves of Sparta, but not normal slaves. They were state slaves. They outnumbered the Spartans by 7 to 10 times. How could the Spartans be full-time soldiers? Because the Helots did all the agricultural work and production. Spartans only dealt with war. And the darkest part, the Cryptia. Every year, young Spartan men would go to Helot villages at night and kill the strongest, smartest Helots. Why? To prevent potential rebellion. The movie never mentions the Helots because they're the heroes of the movie, but real Sparta was a society built on slavery. Another fact, women in Sparta. In the movie, Queen Gorgo is shown as a strong character, and this part is actually true. Spartan women were the freest women in ancient Greece. They could own property, make agreements, and receive an education. Why? Because since the men were always at war, the women had to manage the home, the farm, and the property. Athenian philosophers used to criticize Spartan women, saying, "They're too free, this isn't right." Interesting, isn't it? One of the coolest scenes in the movie, the arrival of the Immortals, those masked, mysterious, elite Persian warriors. Were the Immortals real? Yes, but not like in the movie. The real Immortals were the 10,000-man elite guard of the Persian Empire. Where does the name Immortal come from? Because whenever a soldier died or was wounded, someone else immediately took his place. Their number was always 10,000. It was as if they never died. Were they masked, strange, ninja-like warriors like in the movie? No, they were normal Persian soldiers, just the best of them. They had colorful uniforms and gold ornaments. They were flashy, but not mysterious as portrayed in the movie. As for the size of the Persian army, the movie says 1,000,000 men. Herodotus says 2.5 million, including soldiers plus support staff. What do modern historians say? Probably between 100,000 and 300,000. It's still many times larger than the Greek army, but not 2.5 million. Why? Because feeding, providing water to, and organizing 2.5 million people was impossible at that time. An army that large would have destroyed itself. It would have been a logistical disaster. But it's shown exaggerated in the movie. Endless soldiers, giant elephants, rhino-like creatures. Hollywood. Thermopylae was a defeat. The Spartans died and the Persians crossed the pass. But the movie says this defeat united the Greeks and eventually gave them inspiration to defeat the Persians. Is this true? Yes. A few months after Thermopylae, the Battle of Salamis, the Athenian general Themistocles destroyed the Persian navy in a narrow strait. He applied the Thermopylae tactic, the narrow pass strategy, at sea. A year later, the Battle of Plataea, the united Greek army completely defeated the Persian land army. The Persians were forced to withdraw from Greece. Leonidas' sacrifice was not in vain. The resistance of the 300 Spartans showed all of Greece that the Persians are not invincible. They may have the numbers, but we can win with strategic advantage. The movie actually tells this very well. In the final scene, we see Dilios, the soldier with the eye injury, going to Plataea the year later with 30,000 Spartans and tens of thousands of Greek armies. The story that 300 Spartans fought to their last
breath at Thermopylae ignited and encouraged the Greek army. Was it propaganda? Yes. Did it work? Absolutely. And 2,500 years later, we're still telling this story. This shows they did something right. So, is 300 a bad movie? Definitely not. 300 never claimed to be a historical documentary. It's an adaptation of a Frank Miller graphic novel, a stylized, exaggerated, epic story. The movie does one thing very well. It tells the emotion, the sacrifice, and the heroism. It captures the essence of Thermopylae, the resistance of a few brave people against a giant army. Are there historical errors? Of course. Spartans weren't naked. Persians weren't monsters. More than just 300 people fought. Ephialtes actually wasn't disabled, and more.
But the purpose of the movie wasn't to be a textbook. It was to tell a gripping story. And it succeeded. Real history is more complex, more nuanced. Both Persians and Greeks were normal people. They weren't just heroes or villains. It was simply the clash of two great civilizations. But there are millions of people who watched 300, became curious about Thermopylae, researched it, and learned the real story. That counts for something. In conclusion, watch the movie as a cinematic work. Enjoy it. But if you want to learn the real history, do a little more research. And believe me, the real story is just as interesting as the movie. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Let me ask you in the comments, I assume you've seen the movie 300. Which scene was your favorite? And did your perspective on the movie change after learning the real history? If you have suggestions, let me know which movie or series real history you want me to tell. Gladiator, Troy, or Vikings? You tell me. See you in the next video. We will continue to get lost in the depths of history. Goodbye.